I'm Dan Woodlock. I run our healthcare business at InterSystems. Basically, InterSystems is a creative data technology company, so we're good at kind of managing healthcare data especially, but we have other verticals as well, but I run the healthcare vertical. And there's two product lines as part of that. So one is an EMR that we sell outside the States called TrackCare, and the other is a product line called HIMSS, which basically is something that pulls together data from multiple EMRs, kind of aggregates clinical data for maybe, a regional health authority or a state or a region or a state in the U.S., or provider, payer, anybody that wants to bring together the data on their patients or their members or their citizens to do research or help with point of care, decision-making, that kind of thing.
Got it. And, of course, InterSystems, being no strangers to talking health tech, particularly in the APAC region, which is great. So good understanding there. And that gives context, particularly for the US region. But we were chatting just before we started. There's a lot of exciting, interesting stuff happening with InterSystems. But tell me a little bit more about some of these projects coming up. I think you mentioned Project BEST. Is that
Project BEST? Yeah, I'll talk about that one. Yeah. So, the FDA, once they approve a drug, after the drug is out there, they have to do post-market surveillance to see if there's any adverse events. Yeah, with the drug, and providers are obligated to report on any adverse events, and this is all a good thing, but it's also a very manual process, because when you see an adverse event, you have to fill out a form and then send it to the FDA, and then the FDA has to call you up and get the chart and blah, blah, blah. So we've been working with one of our customers named eHealth Exchange. They're a national network, and they basically have hundreds of provider systems connected to them. And the FDA is part of this project, and when an adverse event happens, the FDA can ask eHealth Exchange for the patient's record, and then eHealth Exchange will fetch the patient record from all these provider systems. So InterSystems is the technology backbone for eHealth Exchange, and this is all done via this FHIR standard, if you're familiar with that, that standard. So that's pretty cool because it saves an enormous amount of time, and the people at the FDA can get a complete picture of that patient and make sure it really was an adverse event, because some of these are kind of false alarm type situations. And the other model that we're implementing is a push model. So at the provider site, it can look through events in the EMR and see whether there's any potential adverse events, and then push them through the system over to eHealth Exchange, over to the FDA. The FDA can look at it and then log it as an adverse event. So it improves the amount of reporting that we can do, the amount of surveillance, the quality of the data, lowers the workload of everybody involved. So it's good. It's a fun project.
Well, I mean, that's a great use case and example of the ability to, once you're you can pull all the bits and pieces together and do it in a standardized, interoperable way, and make sense of data, and actually action things that you mentioned would be otherwise remarkably tedious or manual or just not able to do. So being able to do these things at scale is important. So all these issues, I guess, then come out, or the important factors around having secure data, having it accessible. So all of these elements that we talk about in this interoperability phase that's a great example of what you just said.
Yeah. So you have data rights are clear in this. In this case, this is part of what we do as part of surveillance, data quality, accessibility. I mean, and it's also actually a great example of this new FHIR standard. Because the way interoperability works in a lot of ways today is HL7 kind of copying the data around. So you have a lab system, and then the EMR wants to know about the lab test results, so you make a copy over into the EMR. And, of course, the FDA doesn't want a copy of everybody's medical record, right? But they want it on demand. So if there's an adverse event, just let me pull it for that one patient related to this med. So FHIR is more of a, request, call and response kind of standard, where you can say, I just want this data for this one patient. Give me it, please. And so it's a great kind of next-generation interoperability approach that, you wouldn't really be able to do this with HL7, this kind of use case.
That's a good example. And you mentioned, next generation. And if I think about data, I guess combining those two things, no doubt, artificial intelligence and generative AI would be front of mind. And you were moderating a panel, was that
yes. This morning. Yeah, we just finished, actually.
Yeah, right. Well, tell me about that. What were some of the discussion points?
Well, it was called Gen AI's Got Talent.
Nice.
So we did a little bit of a game show. Okay. Gen AI was the contestant trying to prove the talent. And then we had three physicians from the Mayo Clinic, Mass General, and Vanderbilt.
Yes.
And they were basically evaluating different use cases. So we kind of live use cases where we'd say, hey, here's a patient, summarize the patient record, or what would you do next as a diagnostic test? And then the panel would sort of critique how Gen AI did at these different things. And it wasn't perfect, but it was useful. Yes. This is kind of, we're really sitting on a breakthrough, I think, especially in the way clinicians relate to their EMR and the kind of user experience process. Generative AI can really revolutionize that. And so we're kind of exploring that concept with these physicians.
Sounds like it made it through to the grand final then, is that right?
I actually asked them at the end whether they'd make it to the final round. Actually, 2 of the 3 said yes.
2 out of 3.
The third one was worried about her job, so she said, no, I'd rather keep my job.
It's a conflict there. No, amazing. So there's those things going on, and those are the key topics. In terms of then, for InterSystems, what you're working on now, what can we look forward to seeing over the next 6 to 24 months?
So I guess the other thing worth mentioning, at least for the HIMSS show, is we have a bunch of our startup innovators in our booth.
Right. Yeah.
So part of what InterSystems does with our data platform technologies, we enable new software companies to build their applications or connect their applications to the EMRs of their customers. Because, you can imagine there's rarely a software product that doesn't have to interoperate with something. Right, and we're specialists at that. So we've kind of 9 different companies that are demoing in our booth that partner with us on our technology. I'll give you one because it's kind of cool. Actually, they're all cool. But this one named Laura Health, they have a diagnostic implant that you put in your mouth, basically, for continuous monitoring.
Cool.
So this is like it's almost like a continuous blood test, let's say. So it's monitoring your saliva for 1,000 different conditions that it can basically add value on. And it's just like a retainer that you can wear during the day and you can take out, that sort of thing. And it's a new kind of, diagnostic approach that's non-invasive, simple to do, can be done more continuously versus just I go into my doctor every couple months to do something. So it's kind of a neat approach.
I love that. And I guess that makes so much sense about partnership with InterSystems and where you would add a lot of value there, because the last thing I would want to do as a startup is, I'd want to be focusing on all of those front-end elements and the technology and the specialization about what makes the product different, because I know so much time and effort can be burnt in all the getting the back-end systems right, and no one's got the scale at the startup side to be able to do things as, in the way that InterSystems does. So kind of thing makes so much sense.
Interoperability is complicated, and these poor startups have to end up being experts at interoperability unless they can find somebody like us that they can kind of offload that challenge to. And then this company can work on, how do I get the most out of a saliva reading? We have other companies that do pain monitoring by face, by facial expression, others that are doing diagnostics by breath. And so, there's a secret sauce to each of these companies, which usually is not interoperability with your EMR.
Yeah.
And so they can focus on their secret sauce and rely on people that love interoperability. I mean, there's not that many of us who love interoperability, so, might as well partner with us and we'll help you out in that sense. So that's usually our role with these startups.